cohesion. So just, it's maybe not the best indicator, but like, how much do you trust your neighbor or something like that, those sorts of things. Um, what the effect of television would have on that. Now, it'd be really cool to do this study for, oh, you live in the UK and don't go to uni. Yeah, okay, that's fine. So, um, I suspect probably your school will not have access to the Quarterly Journal of Economics, though your teachers would be thrilled if you were to ask them for access to the Quarterly Journal of Economics. Um, but yeah, if you do plan on going to university, um, you will have easier access um, to resources like that. But again, guy's name's Nathan Nunn, last name spelled Nunn, and he will certainly. That's actually where I got that particular paper. It'll definitely be on his website. Um, but yeah, so the this would be like a really interesting study. The question about the effect of television on these measures of social cohesion would be really. Oh, I am trading with him, so I'd like to do the demand to sour the relationship so I can go to war later, but in this case, I think I'm gonna be nice. That was just a spy that was caught, and I am spying on him too. So, yeah. So on this question about the effect of television, I mean, this is something that's I think sociologists. I'm really not that good on all of the academic disciplines. This is something that they have written books on, but uh, at the risk of sounding slightly elitist, the tools of economics are pretty advanced. And so there may be very interesting questions that are posed by some of these disciplines, but they don't always have the means through which they can test them in a particularly rigorous way. A good example of this would be political science, which is I have a lot of friends who have some very interesting ideas on politics, but they're not necessarily able to translate those into a good empirical paper. Oop, I don't have slots for great work. That's a shame. I got to get on top of that. Sorry, I will get back to the talk. The Indonesia paper was kind of interesting too, but I thought the slavery one was probably the most interesting one that I dealt with. I do need to figure out what's going on with my culture though. That's not the one. Interesting. I didn't know that I didn't have that many slots for right. Okay, well, I'll just put him to sleep. He'll be able to figure that out later. So yeah, again, the impact of television would be really interesting to study on something like the United States or the UK or any sort of Western industrialized country. But it's really hard, right? Like there's if the tools are only so effective. There's you can't just make you can't make this stuff up. Oh, sorry, I was talking about the tools in the first place. Yeah, so I have a lot of friends who do political science. Um, and there's a claim that you can make, and there's really interesting theory that you can do. But if you're looking to demonstrate a claim, that can be really hard work. Like, for instance, if you think about it, if you want to say, um, I think it's malaria that causes Africa to suffer economically, and somebody else turns around and says, no, I don't think that's the case. I think it's, the slave trade. Well, people can argue and debate, and there's value in that. But there isn't necessarily like an ironclad conclusion that you can get to. I also need to figure out. I also need to figure out how to stop bankrupting my nation. Um, Probably after this Gallias, I'll build some trade ships to figure that out. But yeah, like there's definitely value in terms of debate and um, and doing theoretical work. But at some point, this is actually something we talked about on the last stream, the Galileo quote, measure what is measurable and make measurable what is not. You want to um, you want to be able to talk to somebody who maybe doesn't share your particular point of view and convince them. Because it's just as important to find out whether or not, like, if some of these things aren't actually the case. Let's just build ourselves a cargo ship. Um, so yeah, in the case of the United States, it's really hard to try and come up with some kind of a control or something like that, right? Television has become fairly saturated in terms of that culture. And again, that will apply to whatever developed country you're considering. That's not just an American phenomena. But in the case of Indonesia, you do have these regions which have no TV and then have television introduced. And then you've also got these interesting geographic properties, which are there are mountains that kind of cause some interruptions to the signal. And so that causes another interesting situation where you're sort of able to control and kind of make these boundaries based on the geography of the country. In that case, geography is relevant towards the analysis. And so in this particular case, they did find a connection between the uh, the introduction of television and sort of for lack of a better term, the erosion of these measures of social cohesion. That things, like, people kind of trusted the government a little bit less, and just had a lower opinion of, let's say, strangers um, when they had access to television than when they didn't. And again, it's not just enough to take, here's one place where you've got access to television and here's another where you don't have access to television, because it could just be that, this one city, like, you've got the city with television and the city without television. It could just be that people are less trusting in that other city, which has nothing to do with television. Um, oop, Another great prophet. I'm not quite sure what to do about that. I don't like using the upgrade to heal, but I can't really afford to move the ship away, so it's the best I could do. So I'm almost tempted to use this guy to spread religion. Let's just see what the religious pressure is here. So, um, yeah, I think if I go to Melbourne and convert that, the rest of the religious pressure will follow through. But yeah, so like if you just take two cities, here's one that had television, here's one that didn't. This demonstrates that television has a negative impact on these social measures. Um, there are answers to that. Like, it could be, well, that's interesting, but how do we know that, the people in the city just aren't different from the other one? Because let's face it, people are different. And so you introduce different controls for these things. And I mean, there's an interesting book by, I only know Josh Angrist, and he's at MIT. It's called Mostly Harmless Econometrics. So if you are a fan of The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, that's what the reference to Mostly Harmless is. And his ideal is basically to say that treat an economics experiment as if it was a controlled medical trial. Awesome. That's exactly what I wanted. So I'm at peace for a little while, and I really need to get this um, financial and um, happiness situation under control. I think one thing I could do is retire some of my navy. Let's just move them in, and I'll close off the idea. But yeah, so his ideal would be a randomized trial. I think I'll use this one for exploration. Definitely want to keep the trebuchet. I really want to keep all the land units actually. So let's just see. Hmm. Yeah, there's really no good way to navigate this financial problem actually. I will stay the course for now and see what doing repairs does for me. Um, so if you're trying to introduce some new, drug, some cure for some disease or something like that, you're going to do controlled trials. You're going to have, one group which gets the drug. You're going to get one group that has a placebo. You're basically going to make sure that you are measuring the actual impact of that drug as opposed to anything that is unique in the subject. Now, as awesome as it would be to do proper randomized trials and all of these really interesting ideas that you'll get from medicine, the fact of the matter is that you, you know, you have some problems being able to accomplish that in the real world. Um, as I said, I'm in Canada, so if they said let's shut down the Toronto Stock Exchange to see whether or not that has any impact on the economy, well, I mean, we already have theory that says that it's kind of important to have financial markets. And, you know, clearly there's a lot of damage that happens if you do something like that. So as a result, you have to use other techniques. And Angrist's sort of approach is to structure some empirical projects to do the work like what Nathan Nunn does, and to organize them in such a way that they behave as close to you know a medical experiment, or like a trial like that. They behave as close to that sort of a thing as you can manage, and that's just a matter of making sure that you've identified the appropriate controls and the basically you've measured the confounding influences. And then, of course, the other thing too is there's the big question that you're not just looking for correlation, you are looking for causality. So you're specifically saying in the case of Indonesia that it is the presence of television that causes people to think about their neighbors and their communities different than if they were without television. So it's a really impressive. I mean, this is the one reason why I like studying this stuff. It's an extremely impressive undertaking. Um, and it's something that I'd like to be able to make my own contribution to if I can, but um, it's challenging at times. um, I know I've kind of been rambling at this point. It's mostly just because I'm trying to sort out what to do on my Civ game, but the uh, the last paper that we did dealt with climate change, and it was specifically the impact of climate change on again developing. The prof that did this particular class is does a lot of her work in development. So as a result, the papers that we needed to replicate the results for tended to reflect that interest. And so that one dealt with, basically the idea of changes in temperature will affect developing countries, ones that, again, tend to be countries like Ethiopia. Um, they tend to be affected more heavily than their Western counterparts. Neat. I hope Bismarck carries through on his plots against me. But yeah, uh, that particular paper had a really interesting set of results because they found like the first thing that you would imagine would be it's like you've got climate change, things are getting hotter or there's a lot of different things that can happen to that you can sort of imagine would cause problems in a developing country. The reason why you'd be concerned about farming is because that is the majority of economic output for a country like that. And so if you have something like climate change, which tends to affect, um, or you'd think would affect agriculture, again, farms tend to do better or worse based on how the weather has been. You'd imagine that would be the reason for the effect of climate change, but that isn't actually what the paper found. They didn't find any significant relationship between um, climate change and the impact on agriculture. But they were able to come up with this sort of political economy story. So, dealing with the structure of how the country is organized and sort of the decisions that people make as far as their um, as far as governments are concerned. Ah, yes, I now have to deal with a revolution. I think that'll be manageable, though. I definitely need to get this unhappiness taken care of. Um, Basically, they found that the causes were more tied with um, those reasons than, let's say, just a direct application of saying that farming countries are worse off because of climate change. So that was an interesting paper to do. It's a little bit harder to explain just because it relies on some certain economic assumptions. I mean, I have had the benefit of 4 years of education on these things, and I did well enough to get into the program that I'm in. But I don't know, they're interesting ideas. It gives me something to talk about when I'm playing Civ. Although, again, it would have been nice to have a civilization that I've actually done research on, like the ancient Greeks. Although, again, that research isn't for economics. That was just something separate. So I'm guessing that was Germany that stole the technology. I'll just have to live with it. This revolution's actually problematic. Hmm. So what if I move this to another city? I actually think I'm going to redirect these knights to deal with the revolution. I mean, this army is pretty unnecessarily large. I could probably afford to lose some of them, but the problem is they're all going to die once we go to war again. I didn't know I lost that worker. It's a pretty fast movement over mountains that it did, to be honest. But again, I think at this point the AI has kind of gotten to a point where it's doing better because it's cheating, not necessarily because it has better strategy. I think I'm just going to need to accept that. Okay, I don't like doing this, but let's get rid of these units. I'm definitely not getting rid of the trebuchets. And I really don't want to get rid of my last crossbowman, but okay. Oh gee, Ethiopia's mad at me. Actually, I should probably cycle through my um, cities and make sure they're not developing anything for war anymore. Yep, no, they're all just dealing with the consequences of me going to war. So what can we do here for trade? Okay, I like trading with Kabul. I'm sort of curious how long this peace treaty is going to be going for, actually. Not quite what I intended, but 221, so I've got 6 turns before I can go to war again. Incidentally, if you're interested in any of the more historical content, there should be 2 highlights on the channel, um, which have different professors. I know the most recent one with Professor Marshall, he dealt a little bit more with narrative in games. He does have a background in classics, but we talked a bit more about how the rules of games sort of affect the experience and sort of have a role in sort of creating these narratives. But if you're interested in, let's say, ancient history, the sort of the themes that Civilization deals with, and it's not that we didn't talk about Civilization. He actually had some really interesting views about Civilization. But if you're interested in, uh, let's say, what was it like to live in ancient Greece or something like that? The interview before um, was with someone who focuses on ancient Roman spectacle. And so we talked about gladiators for a substantial part of it, but also other forms of spectacle. Um, not really theater, but we talked about things like Roman mimes, which were a little bit more like Cirque du Soleil rather than what we tend to associate with mimes now. Both of them were really interesting interviews. For some reason, I tend to promote the Gladiator one a bit more. I think that's just because it's what people immediately think of as far as Civilization. And I think the way to really go about it is you watch the first interview so you sort of get what the series is about. And then that equips you for the discussion that I have with Professor Marshall. Sorry, it was Professor McElduff was the first professor I talked to. But basically, Professor McElduff's is a little bit more historical in nature, and then Professor Marshall's is a discussion in terms of things like the fact that, in history, there was no leveling out effect. It's not that, somebody sat down and said, okay, well, Denmark needs to get something too, otherwise that's just not fair. History tends not to be very fair to a lot of countries and to a lot of people. Now, a game isn't very fun if you don't have balance. So as a result, um, sort of the imposition of this this kind of fairness leads to a different experience in civilization than maybe is historically accurate. So we talked a little bit about that. We also talked about MMOs. So I was very grateful that both of them decided to come on the stream and share their insight. Um, but yeah, that's just mostly, obviously there's only so much that I can talk about economics and not make it just purely navel gazing on my part. So I thought that was I think their um, their interviews are also sort of an indication in terms of where you can go with some of these topics and what makes them interesting. Why can't I move this profit where I want to? Ah, that's why. So banking is probably better just so I can stop bankrupting my empire. Okay, this is great. I'm gonna be going to war with Buenos Aires in a couple of turns, so let's do Belgrade. So I still think Germany is the best way to go, um, just because they're the still have the highest score. Again, I suffer some geographic limitations as far as setting up my trebuchets. The nice thing is that these knights can sort of afford to just surround the city and take the hits. I don't know if I'll get through all of this in the playthrough though. I only have really 4 turns worth of savings in my treasury. Although I think clearing out a barbarian camp will keep me afloat for one more turn. Wow. Oh, it's because I lost the dice. That's really bad. This is why I was really hesitant to um, scale back my military, just because it's hard to defend. Uh, Actually, I should have done Melbourne. That's closer. I was too busy focusing on the dollar value. Kind of want to know what happened to that other knight that I had. And it looks like I lost. Yeah, I kind of thought that was going to happen. So bank's kind of the only option I have at this point. And I guess this one has to go to Washington. I think I had another worker running around as well, and ideally I'd like to put them in. Um, I'd like to put them in this region just so I can start cleaning up and developing my Ethiopian holdings. Yeah, this revolution's getting out of hand. Again, I don't like using the point to heal the unit because that's a short-term solution, but at this point I kind of need to get, even just one extra turn's worth of gold is something that helps me. I also face a bit of a tough decision. I mean, there's two ways that I can approach this, which is I can go to war right away and hope I take the holdings relatively quickly. But if I do take the holdings relatively quickly, that just means I have more unhappiness to deal with. Or I wait a few turns before I initiate something and sort of use that to repair. Hmm, I'm really hesitant to do this, but I'm going to disband it just because I need the gold. The majority of my gold loss is just purely coming from this. Um, it's purely coming from the unhappiness. But unfortunately, what's happening now is unhappiness is breeding revolution. Revolution is destroying my infrastructure, which is itself exacerbating these problems. So I've basically put myself in something of a pickle. I also should see if I can house that painting yet. Yeah, they're going nuts on my infrastructure. Oh, good. Yeah, so I still only have one place for painting. Who is the writer? Shi Nian. I'm not familiar, but let's find out what. Yeah, I'm absolutely not familiar with the work at all. It's actually a lot more damage than I was expecting for them to take. Hopefully I don't lose that unit. That's particularly bad if I do. So my problem here is that I want to go from Philadelphia to um, Lalibela, but in between I'm going to have these revolutionary ships. Let's make a quick stop to Washington first and see what we can do. Unfortunately, next turn it looks like that camp gets dealt with, so that'll give me a bit of money to keep me afloat. Okay, we'll see how many turns of gold I can get from that. Oh, good. Hi, brought into. Or, sorry, it's not brought into, it's brought, uh, I can't, I'm actually, my chat is on my bad monitor, so I can't tell if that's an I or a L, so I apologize for mispronunciation. I will call you brought, and if the distinguished gentleman is still here, he can tell you that I thought it was the disgusted gentleman originally, so overall, I'd say your name got a slightly better treatment than mine, though certainly not as good as it deserved. I apologize for that. Oh, good Lord, what do I do with this? Marcus might be. All right, I will call you Marcus then. And I apologize. It's entirely my fault for not putting it on the not putting it on the right screen. It's nice to have some new faces here, actually. I will admit, this is a little bit of a different time from when I normally stream, but it's a function of the holidays, and certainly happy to play Shiv and sorry, play Civ and share it with you guys. Thanks for stopping by. So I think the key to this whole thing is repairing this plantation. But how I get a worker there safely is a bit of a mystery. Have I played Civ Revolution? That is the mobile title that they made, right? I think I played it on. I haven't played the second one, but I believe I played the one that they made for the Nintendo DS. I seem to recall it was a fairly simple version of Civilization, which doesn't necessarily make it bad, but Um, I think it was one that I found not as playable, or sorry, not as replayable as the other Civilization games. I think what happened, I am going a little bit by memory, but if it's the Nintendo DS game that you're referring to, I noticed that I sort of played through a couple of rounds and then I sort of left it. I still have it. It's actually probably just a few feet away from me here, but I I have this PC Mac version which has a bit more complexity in it, which is my appeal. Oh, sorry, the appeal to me rather, not my appeal. Well, that was stupid of me. So 5 turns, and I'll have a pretty significant reduction in my unhappiness. I'm scared to death I'm going to lose that um, inventor, so I also don't know what this knight's health is at. You have it for console. Are you enjoying it? I know the console version was actually different the from the DS one that I played. The big problem I'm running into is I only have knights to deal with this, and knights, I mean, these are units that are designed to deal with knights. I just don't know if I want to change the composition of my army specifically to deal with this revolution. Okay, so as much as I'd like to go to war, you have Civ 5, but the computer isn't good enough to run it. Oh, that's a shame. I definitely can appreciate that problem, though. I know for the longest time I was playing on a basically a donated PC. A friend of mine had built a new one, and they were also moving out of town. So um, rather than kind of go through the expense of moving it, they decided to give it to me. But as a result, I mean, it was better than what I had, which was basically nothing. Um, but in my own case, you know, my gaming that I do is actually on this machine, which is, well, sorry, not all my gaming, but like the streaming that I do and the games that I play for the stream is actually on this Mac, which was a purchase for school because I needed something that could sort of do some somewhat rigorous statistics work. So this has the side benefit of being something that I can do something very non-academic with. Um, but yeah, I mean, if I didn't have this, I would very much be at a point where I couldn't play some favorite games of mine purely for technical limitations. But I'm glad you're enjoying Revolutions. I think from everything that I've heard, the PC version, or sorry, not the PC, but the console version was a marked improvement over the DS version that I played. And again, there's always a question of people's tastes, right? I'm very happy she offered that. That will deal with some of my unhappiness. I also think it's a matter of preference, right? I think I like the fact that they've got enough inside of the Civilization series to tailor it to uh, different different interests. I think it also speaks to you know, I guess I don't know if I should say the flexibility or just kind of the the great core behind the Civilization games that they do find a home on so many different platforms. Hmm. I'm interested to see if that knight can finish them off. I know it'll be a costly attack, but if I can wipe them out, yep. I don't think you can do amphibious assaults in this game. I'm screwed if they can. Um, and let's build the manufactory here. That'll just give me one fewer tile to worry about. And what do we build in Atlanta? It's still growing, sort of. Oh, harbor should be a priority just so I can finally get some of the trade benefits. All right, let's see what disasters are going to happen this term. I'm determined not to call it quits on this playthrough, but man, this is rough. I apparently have no place running the United States. Looks like there's quite a few new people in here as well. Welcome to everyone. I'm sorry I ran out of all the economics papers to discuss this time around. I've run out of steam a little bit in terms of things to discuss on this game, but you get to see me um, mismanage the United States into civil war and just general technological and economic stagnation. I'm gonna be cheeky and just convert his capital. Hmm. So I'd love to just rush the knights out and kill that thing, but there's two of his buddies who I think could probably kill that. So I'll just give it one turn. Actually, let's should be fortified till he. Well, I don't have the option now. And I think if I go to try and repair something, this musketman will be able to take them down. So for now, I'll just worry about repairing things in the south, and we'll slowly reconstruct it. What demographic is most important for me? Do you mean in terms of streaming, or do you mean in terms of, um, are you talking about something inside of Civilization? Hello, Mr. Beck. Um, and Marcus, I'll be honest, I actually haven't really put a lot of thought into your question. I suppose, as far as streaming is concerned, I am quite new at it. Um, I couldn't really put it in any kind of, you know, marketing term or something like that, if that's what you're looking for. But I suppose, I mean, I'm not really going to. I don't see how I could really be of any appeal to people who are looking for people who are very skilled at games. So, you know, as much as I enjoy playing Dota 2, there's always going to be somebody who's better than me at Dota 2, and I don't really have any insight to provide on that. Uh, but I really enjoy gaming. I really enjoy talking about games. I love sharing the experience, and I'm also a student right now. And so I've noticed that some of my most rewarding streams have been with people who are interested in some of the ideas behind the games. And, you know, either they enjoy listening to this, they enjoy participating in the conversations. And so I suppose that sort of attracts a more university aged crowd, though it's not that I particularly seek that. It's just, you know, I think it's a reflection of my own interests. Um, but yeah, so I mean, I don't really, I don't seek out a demographic. And I mean, as far as importance, I think they're all equally important, though I have to admit offhand, you know, it's clearly not for everybody, right? I spent a substantial portion of this broadcast talking about Nathan Nunn's paper about the slave trade causing some. All right, see ya. Causing some, causing economic stagnation in Africa. Thanks for stopping by. Have a good day and a Merry Christmas. Thanks a lot for stopping by, distinguished gentlemen. It was a pleasure having a chat with you, and have a Merry Christmas. Well, that's two civilians. All right, let's see what we're doing here. Oh, wow. A bunch of you just followed as well. Show you the social policies. I definitely can. And thank you for following. So, as far as social policies are concerned, I've maxed Liberty. Didn't have rationalism available at the time. I took the value point in wagon trains because I was building a lot of roads at the time. And then I was heading in a direction that was leading me towards aesthetics. And then I got involved in a terrible war, which led to revolution. And now basically my civilization has now become a complete backwater. Um, what is the best social policy tree and why? It's a good question. I particularly um, I like Liberty quite a bit. The reasons for that are, I think, additional production in cities is very good at the start. I like the fact that if you upgrade, well, it's fun, right? I notice you learn. And sorry, I'm responding to two of you at the same time to the question of the stagnation I found myself in. You learn a lot more when things don't go your way, right? Like if I played this and it's like, one of the normal runs where it's just kind of conquer the world quickly and you run through, that's fine, but I didn't learn anything new. Now I've got this war which has had just this absolute, tsunami of side effects, and so I need to figure out how to navigate through it and still come out on top. So this will be an interesting playthrough. I'm definitely not going to get through it uh, through the whole thing on this stream, but we'll see how it goes. Now, to return to your question about policy trees, I definitely like Liberty because getting collective rule, which gives you the free settler, is I think that's a big benefit because that stacks with your production bonus. So you're using your production to build up your infrastructure. Hopefully that'll make you grow faster or it'll improve your technology or whatever else you want it to do. Collective rule is going to free up the production that you would have used to build that settler. So you can expand without actually dedicating the time and resources towards building that settler. Um, Citizenship, similar idea here, which is your improvements will be built faster, but you also get an additional worker, and that's purely by having culture points. And then the last ones, I think meritocracy is really nice for having those trade routes because if you're planning on expanding out your civilization, then it's nice to get the extra happiness. And then representation I sort of do just so I can fill out the rest of the tree. I mean, a golden age is nice, and the fact that social policies cost less afterwards is good. But then you also consider what happens when you get all of liberty. You get a free great person. And what I usually do there is I get a great prophet so I can enhance my religion because I tend to underplay faith. So once I've got the entire liberty tree, I also can take the advantage of religion, even though I haven't invested anything into it, because I get that free great person. So almost all of the playthroughs I do, I wind up doing Liberty. I'm not particularly fond of all of commerce because I haven't been in a situation where the benefit from like the trading posts and things like that. I'm not at a point where all of these go through, but I do think the reduction of cost of roads and railroads is really good. I like exploration because of the hidden antiquity sites. Um, and normally I like science, I like technological victories, so I tend to max liberty and rationalism, but this time I'm actually going for aesthetics to see if I can get a cultural victory. Although again, I got a little sidetracked with war. Fortunately, though, I finally brought this city under control, so that's going to take some of the pressure off on this revolution, and I can sort of get back on track. So I think we'll start with a monument. And so let's just build the cheap and simple stuff first. Looks like the previous owner didn't take good care of it. I have a suspicion that Harar. Oh, nice. Okay, and Harar is actually going to be solved in 2 turns as well. So I just need to sort of repair uh, this part of the continent, and I should be in a good spot. I think I'm still going to let that unit heal. I don't like the fact, I mean, Washington's starving, but there's really not a lot I can do about it, so. Melbourne went back to Buddhism, which I really should use him to convert. Oh, it's because the Mayans are specifically trying to turn it. Well, you know what? I actually have two uses for spread religion, so I'll just do Belgrade and Melbourne. Hopefully that'll secure that position a bit better. There's also been a few hours on this without a break. I think I'm going to forego any breaks on this stream, but what I'll do is I think I will call it for a bit once I've kind of closed. I think what I'll do is I will crush the rebellion. I will repair my wonders, and before going to war with Ethiopia again, I think we'll end the broadcast there, and that just gives us something to come back to. So none of these units will actually wind up used. Thought of playing with viewers. I did actually play during the extra life stream. I played with my friend Bree, who was also doing a charity stream. I had a lot of fun doing that, and I actually do want to do more games with viewers, so that'd be interesting. I don't have a huge set Civilization play schedule, but I think that would be, I think it'd be fun. One drawback about playing games with viewers is my bandwidth isn't enough to sustain all of the games, but I think Civilization is an exception to that. So I think what I'll do is I'm going to run a couple of tests, and then as long as it works out for me as far as being able to stream and play a game at the same time, I will. I think I should do um, a viewer Civ game. What that'll mean is it's something I'd like to do for sure. So what I think I'll do is once I get the results back from testing that, I will send out a few messages to followers, seeing who's interested, and we can see how many people we can cram into a Civilization lobby. I also got during the Steam sale, I got Europa Universalis 4, which looks really interesting. Um, but that definitely seems to be a pretty complicated game that benefits from talking with an expert as well. So we'll see how that one goes in streams. But yeah, I think Civ with viewers would be a lot of fun. I lost another. Oh, actually, that one's a little less surprising because I keep foolishly moving my knight. Audio is just going to cut out for a second. I try not to check things that are unrelated to the stream, but occasionally I'll get an email or something that needs to get dealt with or at least kind of be looked at in a timely fashion. And the streaming setup I have just causes a cutout in the audio when I do something like that. So apologies for the gaps once in a while. Now that I'm doing this a little bit more often, I am looking into ways to improve the quality of the stream and just make sure things like that don't become a big factor. But it's a bit of a teething process, which is slowly getting better, but not as fast as I'd like it to. Okay. Again, I'm not too worried about minor defeats on these things because I have the city to back them up, and at this point I'm really just trying to rescue workers. So as long as they don't get wiped out, I'm totally fine. I almost get also getting just a little anxious to put a cap on this because it's certainly a very costly. It turns out to be a very costly invasion, not because Ethiopia was strong, but simply because the consequences to the rest of my empire were so great. Looks like it's going to be dealt with before I run out of gold, though, so that's a minor relief. I mean, if I really start running out of too much gold, I can always start disbanding units, but that's just going to hurt me when I go to war with Ethiopia again. I'm just a little frustrated that that worker got taken down because if I can repair this plantation, that helps happiness, which in turn helps gold. Hmm. I think I'll just take the technology hit. I don't particularly like doing that, but all right, decisions, decisions. I mentioned that I like rationalism, but I was going to try a cultural victory this time around. Well, you know what? I am going to be going back to a state where I'm in more happiness. And on its own, additional 10. Yeah, you know what? I think I'm just going to go for aesthetics first. It does mean that I'm going to have to rely a bit on conquest to sort of catch up on the the sort of the opportunity cost of this little adventure. But given the how geographically difficult this was, just for reference, like to get Libella or Lalibela or however it's pronounced, all of this is surrounded by hills, and we couldn't get through Kabul. So basically, it was basically there'd be about 2 or 3 turns in which the city would get free bombardment on all of the troops. Harar, we wound up getting through a negotiation to end the conflict, but just, I mean, given the fact that such a disadvantageous siege worked, it's kind of an indication that we can generally take down anybody that we're contending against as long as we have sort of the manpower. So I don't know. Overall, I'm not too worried about anybody on this continent being able to take me down. Although, I mean, again, at the difficulty level and things like that, uh, there are some pretty heavy bonuses that are given to the AI at this point. But I really do need to repair all my stuff because I don't think I can afford too many more turns of stagnation like this. I'm almost wondering if I should bring this boat back so I can just get rid of those last barbarian or revolutionary units. Definitely at a point where I need more constabulatory. Actually, just build everything, I think. And we're broke. Also still have no places for paintings. I'm not too worried about Washington starving because I know that's just purely from um, the broken improvements. That should be dealt with pretty quickly. Okay, they're just always reconverting Belgrade, so let's just go to Melbourne and get that taken care of. And I'm glad I'm not the only one who's a technology backwater. It looks like there's a couple of civilizations that are really far behind the curve. I know there was, the last I saw, there was only one tech that Germany had that we didn't. But I mean, the whole point behind these attacks have been the thought that somebody in North America, or well, not just North America, but basically the Western Hemisphere, that there'd be fewer people and that they'd be stronger as a result of it. But we'll see if that's true. I mean, it may not be. I've got more artists than I know what to deal with. I mean, I really want to keep, I want to keep them so that I can house the paintings when I once I have them, but it's actually let's see if I can trade. There's a benefit that comes from different eras and different civilizations. So I've got a Renaissance by us. Let's trade that painting for medieval. And we'll trade it with him because I'm pretty sure I'm going to seize this again. Um, why can't I pick my... Oh, here we go. Oh, does it have to be the same type? Yeah, looks like it does. Oh, oh, you sent me a message on Twitch. I haven't seen it myself yet, but that's probably just because I have those notifications down. So thanks, and I'll follow up with you once the stream is done. I'm gonna guess that that's related to any kind of viewer games. So I'll get back to you just to let you know that I got the message, and then regarding viewer games, once I have a bit more information in terms of getting them done in a way that will actually allow the stream to still run, I'll maybe follow up with a second message on that. Oh, it's forcing me to move, that's why. Actually, that's a really dumb idea to leave them out like that. Um, it's tempting for the gold per turn, but not 2 gold per turn. I need more. I'm not actually quite sure why I seem to be losing so much now. Okay, I'll definitely deal with the... I need to get that trade agreement back up, otherwise I'm in trouble. Seriously? Yeah, that works. Oh, that's interesting. I didn't know that they'd automatically give 7. I wish I read that before I did the deal. Yeah, the caravans were constantly destroyed by barbarians. But I also know there was a period where I was making about 26 gold a turn when I didn't have um, when I only had 1 caravan. But I think the plan, I think I'll just keep the same plan, which is to repair all of my, basically repair all of my territory, and then we will leave the next war and the reconstruction to next stream. Also, I thought I was building caravans. Oh no, Boston's on a bank now. I thought I had more of these building. I like cargo ships a lot, but they've been pillaged constantly through this playthrough from like the ancient times, so this would have been useful when I was actually fighting. I suppose I should be grateful still, but um, this seems like a bit of a white elephant. This is probably going to wind up costing me more than anything. I think I will ditch the knight. And for some reason, I'm still losing food, even though I've rebuilt everything. Ah, it's because I'm closed off from these tiles. Unfortunately, I think this is going to take some time to get where it needs to be. It's probably dangerous to get rid of all the land units in this area, but I definitely need to cut costs. Hmm, no, I don't have the option of changing. Um, well, let's see if I can get away with it. I don't think Bismarck had anything that I wanted, but maybe I haven't seen Austria. I haven't seen if they have any goods. Yeah, going to war really hurt my reputation. One other thing I haven't done yet is considering switching some cities over to gold production, but I'm really, really hesitant to do that. By the way, I see there's actually a lot of you have followed. Not everybody who's speaking in chat, but I've been getting a few notifications about followers. I apologize for not tailoring them right now, and that's just because there've been so many of you. So thank you so much for following. I'm glad that you've enjoyed what you've seen enough to do it, and I wish I could do it by individual names, but unfortunately the notifications only come up very briefly, and there's been a fairly large influx of them. So please don't take that as ingratitude, as it's quite the opposite. But I I'm also constrained by a very ramshackle um, streaming setup. The version of OBS that I'm using is for Mac. It's definitely um, it's a very early beta. So again, thank you everybody who's following and who stopped by and watched me crash the American empire into the ground. It seems I'm not entirely sure I'm any better off at the start of this. I'd really like to join, but not now. And that ship is never going to be where it needed to be. I mean, at least it's getting experience. I suppose there are worse things that could be happening with it, but I need that to be elsewhere. At least we're ready for war. So I'm thinking this means that the effort at the cultural victory was a bad idea. I don't know. Maybe he's just being nasty. I've kind of been ignoring that, just fixing the mess that I've made. Okay. Um, let's do a harbor because I'm going to be having a ship coming out of there. Oh, I think that was my ship. See how many turns this thing survives. Yeah, I think economics is the way to go and not just because of my studies. Um, so we're really done. It almost looks like we are done repairing, and then I just still have my financial mess to fix, but much like the real United States, we are playing for historical accuracy. Probably would have been nicer to get gold, but happiness is fine because in the end, as long as I get my affairs in order, the happiness will translate to that economic benefit. I just need to deal with the imbalances from not having my trade routes, not having um, the proper units. I mean, I didn't really have an infrastructure built to sustain a large army when this whole thing started, but we're slowly getting back in shape. I mean, at one point this used to be minus like 50, so um, I'm not entirely sure. That's kind of like, well, at least I was the least drunk driver on the road. I'm still not entirely sure that's an accomplishment to be proud of, but I mean, there's still some like just from a pure gold standpoint, I don't think there are banks in any of my cities other than Washington. I guess New York if it's building a constabulary. Um, and then with economics, what is it? Camps. I only have one customs house and one trading post. Okay, so economics won't have as big of a benefit as I maybe originally thought it would, but still, each incremental amount of gold that I get will help. Hopefully, I'll be in a position to finish off the war with Ethiopia, which I can kind of start at any turn. But for now, we will. Boston built a bank. Thank you. Yes, that's correct. Um, so yeah, I guess I have a couple of banks, but still, there's still room for improvement. I suspect the former Ethiopian holdings won't have anything. Yeah, if I'm building caravans in there, I probably wouldn't have done that without a bank. So, and I can finally start developing to the south. So one more turn, and I finally fixed all the damage from the revolution. Okay. I suppose this means I didn't really need the Gallius, but so I'll just double check. Obviously, this needs to be repaired. Actually, the extra dives will be nice. That'll give me another bit of leverage for trading. Um, Obviously, I also need to get some shipping units dealt with. I particularly want Atlanta to build this harbor more than anything, though, because that's my best bet to connecting it, which will give me my happiness advantage as well as the gold benefits. I don't think I have access to crabs yet, so that'll be another bonus to happiness. So as far as fishing vessels, it looks like there's two fish, one crabs, and I think there was something down south here. I could be wrong. So I'm going to build three of those, and then um, just finish off the rest of my caravans, and basically just make sure I'm in a slightly more sustainable position than the last time I wound up going to war. But I think that does it for. I will say for now. I would like to. Am I playing? I am playing on an Earth map. Yes. A very well. Here's the settings for the game. So Earth map, large on Emperor difficulty, and standard. I have no idea what the differences are for the rest of it. Wait, I did just save, right? Yes. So yeah, as I was saying, I'm not entirely sure that I'm any better off at the start of or from the start of this playthrough. We did win a war, and then paid dearly for it. I definitely want to play this through to some kind of an ending. It's probably the worst quote unquote start to a civilization game I've ever had, but as I said earlier in the broadcast, um, it is more interesting to you learn more, and it's more interesting to do things when they don't always go your way than just to constantly stomp all the time. There's a lot of new people who are both watching and stop by. Thank you, everyone, for stopping by and watching. I'm glad you enjoyed it enough to follow. If you haven't checked it out already, one thing that we did do as a special event for this channel was a couple of interviews with some professors who are either classicists or have interesting things to say about games like Civilization. They're highlighted. It's Professor McElduff and Professor Marshall. I would recommend watching Professor McElduff's first because it has a little bit more relevance directly to the subject matter of Civilization by talking about Roman Spectacle, and then Professor Marshall sort of talks about her experience of gaming. I thought both of them were really interesting. I really enjoyed doing them. and it was very generous of them to share their time and their insights. So if you're looking for something a little, I suppose, a little academic, but still very interesting, I'd strongly recommend those VODs. Um, if I can make the time, I will try and be back to play a little bit more Civilization later today, but I do have some last minute running around to do before the holidays. So if I don't see you guys before Christmas, I hope you guys have a Merry Christmas. Enjoy the time wherever you are, and if you are spending it with family or not. And we will see you on the next stream. Have a good have a good one.